The BFG is the newest movie directed by Stephen Spielberg and is a film adaptation of the novel written by Raold Dahl. I actually think I pronounced that right. Now, I was really looking forward to this movie for a multitude of reasons. Not simply because Stephen Spielberg is one of my favorite directors and one of the best directors working today, but also because the BFG is one of the very few books that I have read and loved. In the 4th grade, me and my fellow students, we all read this together as a class, and I thought it was a great book. So naturally, when I heard that this movie was getting its own film adaptation, and that Steven Spielberg was going to direct it, and that they had casted Mark Rylance as the BFG, I was all in for this movie. Now the question remains, how is it actually as a movie? So in the beginning of this movie, we see this young orphan girl, her name is Sophie, played by Ruby Barnhill. And what I so loved about Sophie from the very beginning of this movie is simply the fact that this girl just has no fear whatsoever. There's this one scene in the very beginning, it's late at night, everyone's trying to sleep, and there are these drunk Englishmen out in the streets. And she just opens her door and she shouts down to them, "Oi, there are children sleeping in this orphanage. You best shut up or I'm gonna call the cops on you blokes." Alright, she didn't exactly say it like that, but she might as well have. Point is, you see that happen for the first time in this movie, and it leaves you sitting there like, holy shit, this girl fears nothing. However, she does start to feel a wee bit of fear when she opens her window again that night and she sees the shadow of a giant. And this giant knows that Sophie saw him, something that was not supposed to happen at all. And because of that, he reaches into her room and he takes her back to his land, Giant Country. And here's where we are more or less officially introduced to the BFG. And I'm just gonna say this right now, Mark Rylance was awesome as the BFG. I mean, through his performance, he does such a good job at portraying the BFG as funny, warm-hearted, and different. And during their time together in Giant Country, you do see that he and Sophie, they do form a friendship throughout this. So much so that it even gets to a point where the BFG decides he can trust Sophie enough to show her why he goes into the mortal world. And that is so he can deliver dreams to people. I mean, he takes Sophie to this tree with a bunch of these dream orbs that he catches. Then he brings them back to his house and he conjures these orbs up together to create this one dream. And then once he goes into the mortal world, he uses this trumpet blower thing to just send them into people's heads as they're sleeping. And I gotta say, seeing the way the BFG captured these dreams, it looks amazing visually. And it's not just with that. This is a very visually appealing movie. The motion capture that Mark Rylance did for the BFG was fantastic. When you see the BFG on screen, he looks as real as he possibly could have. And just everything about Giant Country in general, I mean, everything looks real, it looks different, it looks like its own little world. So yeah, I will say the visuals in this movie are definitely some of the best we've seen this year. I can't quite say the best, I still have to give that to the Jungle Book, but the visuals were still great. So later on, the BFG brings Sophie back into the mortal land so he can show her just how he delivers the dreams. But it's also at this point he feels it is best to leave Sophie here back in the mortal world for her to return to her orphanage, because he's very nervous about something else in Giant Country, and that is the other giants. Because we've discovered at this point in the movie that the BFG, he's essentially the runt among the other giants. Because the other giants that are in Giant Country, they're bigger than him, they're scarier than him, and worst of all, they go into the mortal world to eat children. And if I am being honest, this was one of the areas in this movie where I had a problem. Not necessarily with the other giants themselves. I mean, they looked great visually, they certainly came off as intimidating, but it's the fact that through these other giants, the movie didn't really give us a lot of real suspense with them. I mean, the movie doesn't do a lot with these giants that make us as an audience really grasp and feel how dangerous they are to the people in the mortal world, in particular the children of the mortal world. There are a couple moments here and there, one in particular when after Sophie convinces the BFG to bring her back to Giant Country with him, and the giants have broken into the BFG's home and they're looking for her because they want to eat her. That moment had some intensity, but not the level that you want. And I do understand why the movie didn't necessarily go in that direction, because they don't want to make this a movie that's going to scare kids, because they know kids are going to see this movie. But I do think the movie held back a bit too much. Even if they threw in something as simple as the giants just sleeping on the ground like they do, and around them are human bones to stress that they had eaten humans. Something like that to really grasp the danger of these giants. And that's another problem with this movie, in the fact that since there's not a lot of intensity or suspense that really happens as much as you'd want it to, there are some pacing issues in this movie. I mean, the main focus of this movie is the BFG and Sophie's friendship, and it is nice seeing them develop this friendship. But when they make it out like that's all they're focusing on in this movie, it does leave you sitting there like, alright, can something else happen here? So anyways, after the Giants were unable to find Sophie in the BFG's house because he was basically able to shoo them all out, Sophie now feels they have to take action against these Giants before they can go back and eat more children. Sophie feels they should go back to the UK and alert the Queen about this so they can take action. But of course, both Sophie and the BFG know that they can't just show up in front of the Queen's castle with a big giant there and just ask for help. So Sophie comes up with this very clever idea in having the BFG just conjure up this really horrific, terrifying nightmare to give to the Queen while she's sleeping that will already give her visions of Sophie, the BFG, and more importantly, visions of the Giants eating children. From there, she can get the idea, hey, let's send the military into Giant Country and do something about these Giants. So they give the Queen her dream, she wakes up, she's petrified. Now Sophie and the BFG can show up at the Queen's castle because, in her mind, she's gonna see it as her dream becoming reality. So now Sophie and the BFG, they get the royal treatment from the Queen, and now the Queen also sends the army in to take care of the other Giants in Giant Country. I will say, the way they stop these Giants, it happens a little too quickly for me. I mean, literally, the military just comes in on these helicopters and they catch all of the man-eating Giants in these nets. And then they just drop them off on this island and leave them all snozcumbers to eat for the rest of their life like the BFG had to. Again, the movie's holding back on the suspense they could potentially have for this movie, which is a bummer. And so the movie ends. We see that Sophie has been adopted by, I want to say, a couple of servants of the Queen, so now she lives in the Queen's palace. The BFG remains in Giant Country. He's writing his own book for himself. He's got a bevy of new, better vegetables to eat rather than snozcumbers. And that is essentially where the movie ends. So all in all, I will say, the BFG is a solid movie. Mark Rylance killed it as the BFG. Ruby Barnhill killed it as Sophie. Steven Spielberg's direction in this movie is great. I love how it shows that he really knows who to cast for each of his movies, including with kids. We all know that kid actors very rarely do a great job in movies, but Steven Spielberg is one of those rare directors who knows how to find the right kids who can do a great job in movies. I really did love the chemistry between Mark Rylance and Ruby Barnhill. They really made it out like the BFG and Sophie had a real genuine friendship with each other. The movie visually looks fantastic. I mean, the way the Giants looked, the way Giant Country looked. Between the Tree of Dreams, the snozcumbers, the movie undeniably looks great. That being said, the movie definitely holds back on the intensity and suspense level that it could have, which is a disappointment. And as a result, it does leave you feeling like the movie's lagging on a bit. And in the end, I will say, this is a movie that I think kids will absolutely love. And I also think it's a movie that adults can enjoy for what it is. So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time.